Hi, and welcome to Learning Lounge. My name is Chris Mattatall, the Board Governor's Teaching Chair, and today I have with me Marc Roussel. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a chemist by training. I've been working here at the University of Lethbridge now for 29 years. It's hard to believe it's been that long. I have taught a variety of courses, mostly in general and physical chemistry, over that time. And I've had a number of graduate students, so I've had the full U of L experience, and I'm currently serving as Associate Dean in the School of Graduate Studies. So
I got to ask you, why chemistry? I've always wanted to ask a chemist that, like, why chemistry? Like, going through high school, were you like lit up because of chemistry? What?
So I actually went to university thinking I would be a physicist.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And high school chemistry tends to be a little bit fact heavy. And I'm very interested in theories. And it wasn't until I hit university that I started to be exposed to the theoretical basis of chemistry, and then I really got excited about it.
Oh, well, that's great. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you for being here, and congratulations on being awarded the 2024 the Excellence in Teaching Award for the University of Lethbridge. And that's a big honor, so congratulations.
Thank you.
So I have to ask you right from the beginning now, what does that award mean for you, having won that award?
It was humbling when I found out that some students and colleagues had nominated me in the first place. I mean, it came out of nowhere. I didn't expect it at all. And it felt, I'll come right out and say it. It felt really good that students and colleagues thought that I was doing a good enough job to even be nominated. And it was incredibly exciting when I found out I won the award. And I was excited, not just on my behalf, but I was so happy for the people who put in the work nominating me in the first place. So the first thing I did was I let them know that I'd won the award and told them not to spread it around because it wasn't known yet. But so it's a huge, huge, huge honor. We have so many fantastic teachers at the University of Lethbridge, and to be singled out for this honor is it just tickles me to my toes.
Well, that's a perfect segue into my next question. So what is it then that drew this attention to you, that you were first nominated and awarded this award? Like, what is it about your teaching? What is it that you do? Why this recognition?
I think part of it is that I try really hard to pay attention to students and what they need at every level. So whether they're undergraduates or graduate students, I try really, really hard to find out where they are intellectually, but also in terms of their personal circumstances, and help them move through the program and learn what they need to learn and move and progress intellectually and in other ways, and professionally.
That's so important.
Yeah.
So I want you to open up on that a little bit. Like, how did you learn to do that? Like, I mean, it sounds easy. But how did you know that was absolutely necessary for your teaching?
So, the funny thing about being a faculty member is that nobody teaches you how to do this stuff, right? And it was especially true. I've been here a long time. I've been here 29 years. The model was basically grab somebody and throw them into the trenches. And I made a lot of mistakes along the way. And hopefully you learn from your mistakes and you realize what the things are that you need to do and the things you need to pay attention to in the classroom, out of the class, how you read test results, especially when they're not particularly good, what you do to correct the mistakes you've made, and kind of just being honest with students. I mean, it's so important when you've had a test that was too hard, which happens once in a while. You go into class and you say, "I'm sorry, I misjudged this. The questions were harder than I thought they would be." Kind of at every step along the way, you learn. If you're paying attention to what you're doing, you learn to correct your mistakes, and also you learn what the students need. But you have to be attentive, right? I mean, it doesn't just happen. You have to actually do a lot of self-reflection, whether things are going well or poorly in a particular class, and ask yourself, how do I either take the good things and make them better, or fix the problems that frankly, as an
Yeah.
instructor, I've created, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have to own your mistakes.
Right. Well, it sounds to me like this has been a developing and growing process for you. Would you say you're a different teacher now than you were 29 years ago?
Yeah, definitely. When you come out of graduate school, you tend to be very idealistic, and there are many things you forget. One of the things that's difficult to internalize, and took me a little while, is that faculty members are outliers by definition, right? We didn't get to be faculty members by being average. Most of the students, by definition, are average, right? And so you can't think, well, I'm going to teach way up here and hope that the students catch up. So you have to, you have to watch for where are the students at in their intellectual development and their maturity, and meet them there,
Right.
and then help them move up, right? And so yeah, it's a process. Absolutely, it takes a while. I would say, kind of the first 3 or 4 years you're here, certainly, and maybe a little longer, you're just trying to figure out who these people are in your class. And then as time goes on, you have a sense of who they are, but you have to also be aware, because I've been here long enough to see this phenomenon, which was first pointed out to me by Professor Bourret in my department, that also there are generational changes as you go through, and you have to kind of keep moving with the students. So yes, I'm a very different teacher now than I was then. I'm much more, I try at least to be much more tuned into who the students are in my class and what they need. What do they need at this point in their development?
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit now. I didn't send this question to you in advance, so this is right off the top of my head. So how are students different today than they were, say, 29 years ago? What are you seeing this changing?
So every half dozen years, you see some changes in terms of the students' interests and focus. I think when I first came here in, hard to believe, 1995, the students that we were getting at that point, most of them, and still to this day, many of them were first-generation university students. And so they needed a lot of help just figuring out university.
Yeah.
And we've gone through a number of phases since then. There was a period a little bit after that where we were seeing a lot of students who were extremely interested in having an impact outside of the university. They were starting charities and they were doing super ambitious things. I mean, one of them started a group that flew doctors to Venezuela to help people out there in the summer season between semesters. And that's maybe the most spectacular example, but we had a whole bunch of students who were very outward directed. And we've seen a lot of other things, but the group that we have now, they've gone through the pandemic. They are, they're in a more fragile place in some ways than a lot of the students we've had before. So their kind of emotional well-being is more of a concern, I hope, for all of my colleagues, because it's more complicated. They've missed out on learning opportunities, so you can't take for granted that they've necessarily mastered all aspects of the high school curriculum.
Right.
So there's these things that, I mean, some of them are just kind of accidents like the pandemic. Other things are just kind of these interesting generational changes. Very recently, we've also had a surprising number of students who were very entrepreneurial, much more so than I've seen in the past. So these things just kind of change, and you have to watch for them. You have to kind of, listen to the students and see what they're talking about and what they're, what is it that they want to get out of their educations, because it does change through time.
Right. So that brings me into my next question. So let's chat a little bit about your developing, evolving teaching philosophy. Like, if I was to come sit down with you over coffee and I say, Marc, I don't have a teaching philosophy. What is your teaching philosophy? How would you describe it?
So you have to be very deliberate about what you're teaching and why you're teaching it, and what the students are going to take away from it, most importantly. Students will forget facts. I've forgotten a whole lot of things I learned as an undergrad, I'm sure. So the facts, although they're important, so I teach chemistry. I mean, there's a kind of a factual basis that the students have to learn. The simple facts that you're going to teach in your courses, they will forget them. They may be important at the moment as examples or whatever it is. But you have to think about, so within a discipline, you have to think about giving them a theoretical framework to fit facts into, because that makes it much easier for them to make sense of things. And for us in chemistry, there's a number of these things. And again, as I was saying, the thing that got me into chemistry was kind of realizing that there was this rich theory that underpinned the whole thing. But then you also have to think about what are the skills they're going to take out of your class that they can use generally regardless of what they end up doing, right? So, and they can be very technical things. So for example, one of the things I spent a lot of time on in my second year physical chemistry class is essentially generating good quality graphs. I mean, it's a simple thing. They've done a lot of graphing and before they get to that point, but they haven't necessarily had somebody tell them, this is what a good graph looks like, and this is, kind of why this is a good graph, and this is how you use it. It's a very simple technical thing, but it's a very transferable skill to a lot of other things they're going to do, right? And in every one of my courses, I have, kind of objectives for things that they're going to take away that aren't just the subject material, that they're hopefully things that they can carry with them. I have courses where I teach them a little bit of elementary programming, because I think learning a little bit of really basic computer programming is useful. I have courses where I teach them how to solve nonlinear equations, which sounds like very esoteric, but in fact there's a whole bunch of problems in life that are essentially one or more nonlinear equations to solve. That kind of, it's pretty easy if you have access to the tools we have now, but somebody has to show you.
That's right.
So I always kind of think in terms of, okay, there's these foundations of the field, but there's also kind of, what are they going to take away? If they're not going to be chemists, if they're going to be chemists, I know what I want them to know, but if they're not going to be chemists, what are they going to take away that's still going to be useful to them?
So this part of practical application, or not even that's not the right word, this part of expansive application, even beyond the field, is part of your teaching philosophy to make sure that it changes them as human beings.
Yeah, I don't know that I'd go quite that far, but it certainly, it gives them tools that they can use as they go out into the world, right? They can meet a new problem and hopefully not be intimidated by it and just realize, oh, I know how to do this, right? Maybe I've forgotten the details of which buttons to press in a particular piece of software, but I know that I can do this, and I can, kind of go and find out how to do this in whatever I'm using right now. I mentioned this before. The other thing about about my teaching philosophy is making sure that I'm not talking over the students' heads. You meet them where they are, and then you move them up to the next level. And kind of all of these things are kind of integrated, right? Providing them with tools that they can use to solve new kinds of problems. Hopefully that's a thing that when I do that, hopefully they're ready to receive that information. So I don't do some of the really advanced stuff in my first year class. I wait till they're 2-3 years in, and then I introduce some of these more advanced tools.
So how do you address multiple levels of readiness? So you have students come in who have basic chemistry or even below basic, and then you have others that are much higher level. How do you differentiate your instruction?
Yeah, so we have some small advantages in chemistry in this province because we have provincial exams. So we have a notion of what the students should know when they come in. But there's no question that not every student has absorbed it to the same extent. And frankly, having students who are at very different levels in your class is hard, right? So what you try to do is to provide some basic instruction that all the students should be able to access and integrate, and really kind of be able to become competent in. Right? And then you sprinkle in a little bit of extra stuff that you may not be planning to examine. I always tell the students, I often do this, and some of the students love it and some of them don't. But I'll stop at some point and I'll say, hey, I'm not going to examine this, but here's something neat for you to think about that connects to the things we've talked about. And, sometimes there are little facts about a compound or something like that. Sometimes they're a story about a scientist. And of course, stories about scientists also a chance to kind of bring in some stories of people who've been neglected in one way or another, who are representative of groups that are underrepresented. So there's things you can do to kind of enrich the course and hopefully make it exciting for students who are more advanced and might get a little bit bored kind of as they come in. The first year class is where that's trickiest. After first year, kind of I try to treat all the students about the same. So I know what they've had for background in first year, and then it's much easier. For the first year classes where these issues are particularly acute.
I think you're impacting human beings more than you realize. That's probably partly why you were nominated for this award. A colleague of mine is doing research right now across the university, has been for the last few years doing surveys of first year students coming in and following them. And we're seeing that executive function skills are really an area of concern for us right now. Students are coming in having a great deal of difficulty navigating some of these difficult life choices that, which you even talked about, whether it's being able to shift when something goes wrong, or something didn't go exactly and how do they shift? How do they cognitively, or how cognitively flexible are they? And so we're seeing approximately 30% of our first year students are struggling with executive function skills. The stuff you're talking about, where you're actually helping them see even chemistry can be applied to greater contexts, seems to me to be a really important life skill.
Yeah. Well, in terms of executive function, I think that's always been a bit of an issue with some of the students coming in.
With all of us.
Yeah, I mean, they don't necessarily know how to, so the big step between high school and university is we don't tell them exactly what to do and when to do it, right? I mean, we have tests, we have assignments and so on. We don't tell them, hey, make sure you set aside this many hours to work on this assignment because it's going to take you that long. And a lot of the students really struggle to organize themselves, especially in first year. But some of them struggle throughout their studies with that, and I think you're right. I think maybe that's an area where we need to devote some attention. I'm not quite sure how to do that. There's a balance that you always have to think about when you're teaching between kind of asking the students to be responsible for themselves at one end, and at the other end, essentially spoon-feeding them, right?
That's right.
And what you're hoping is to find something in the middle so that the students who are struggling with those executive functions have a bit of a framework to work to.
That's right.
So they don't get in serious trouble, while the high-functioning students, maybe they don't need that, but it's not harmful to them to have, again, a bit of a framework. So certainly in senior classes, I'm sure everybody does this, but in senior classes, I often organize larger projects around a set of smaller objectives, right? So, first, kind of tell me what your project's going to be about, and then, find some literature, and right? So there's a set of steps they go through. Again, the really high-functioning students don't need to do this.
No.
But even for them, it's helpful because it stops them from procrastinating, right? They have to do some of this stuff, kind of on a schedule.
Yeah. I mean, we have to realize that many of these students, their brains are still developing.
Yes, very much so. Yes.
All the way to their mid-20s or so. And I like Roger and McDaniel often say that we teach with desirable difficulty. And so we require this effortful learning. They struggle, they make mistakes, but it is really good for their cognitive development. And so you're right in the middle of all of that. Yeah. So let's say I'm a new faculty member and I was just hired, and the dean says, listen, I want you to go talk to Marc. He's going to be your mentor and he's going to talk to you. So I go to you and I say, look, my dean says I should talk to you and I should be developing a teaching philosophy. Well, what would you say to a new faculty member? What advice would you give them on how they should go about developing their own teaching philosophy?
I think it's going to have to be incremental. The advice I usually give junior faculty members when they come here is the first few courses you teach, keep it simple. Don't try to do anything really complicated. Think about a fairly standard, look at some course outlines of some of your colleagues. If some of them are doing something really complicated, okay, file that in the back of your head for now.
Yeah.
But, think about delivering a straightforward course and learn from that experience, because you will make some mistakes along the way, and you need to have something manageable at first, so you have time and space to recover from mistakes. Again, the test that's too hard, how are you going to deal with that? So, if it's really a lot too hard, maybe you're going to need to retest. And so your course outline can't be so packed with material that you can't do that, right? So create some space within your course for, so that you've got a little bit of slack. You will not cover as much material in the lecture as you think you will. Certainly not if you can get the students engaged. They will ask questions. That will slow things down. That's not a bad thing. That's the other thing that junior faculty members have a lot of trouble with, is they have this notion there's all the stuff I have to cover, and they want to race through it. So kind of pick a reasonable amount of material to teach, and teach that. Now, a lot of our junior faculty members in the sciences, their first assignments are in courses where we have lots of sections, and so the best advice you can give people in those situations is, talk to the other people teaching this course frequently about what you're doing and how it's going, and make sure that you check in, and that you're not either pitching the course too high or too low. Because of course there's a danger in making the course too easy as well, right? I mean, the students will lose interest. We know we have some issues with attendance in classes right now, and if the best way to lose your audience is if they think they don't need to come to class.
So obviously you value teaching, and you are good at it. How, and I sent this question to you ahead of time, so you think about it a little bit. How do you, in your opinion, how can the University of Lethbridge ensure that teaching and teaching excellence is one of our top priorities? How can we ensure that teaching excellence is promoted throughout the whole university?
We have to think about teaching right from the start when we're recruiting people, all the way through their careers.
Right.
So at the time at which we're hiring, yes, we want people who are solid scholars in their areas, but we also want to make sure that they're people that will feel comfortable putting in front of a class. This varies a lot by discipline. In some disciplines, people often have a lot of teaching experience when they come here. In the sciences, it's hard because most of us don't.
Right.
And so you need to take the opportunities during the interview to assess, first of all, kind of what are they like presenting material, right? So maybe they'll give a research lecture. We usually ask them to give a teaching presentation as well, where we give them a topic and we say, prepare a class, a single class on this topic. And you have to really pay attention to what you see there, and not let yourself be biased by the other things in the file.
Right.
And you really need to have students in those presentations giving you feedback.
Interesting, yes.
So right at the front end, you need to make sure you hire well.
Right.
And as you need to provide, when they start, you need to provide mentorship, which we just talked about.
Yes, yeah.
You need to encourage people and value their participation in teaching center events or other opportunities for them to learn. I think one of the things that we do better in some areas than others, but hopefully we'll embrace, is peer evaluations, especially early in your career, are really useful.
Yes, yeah.
They need to be honest. So we need to kind of, be able to tell each other what you're doing in your class right now. It's not as good as it could be, and here are the ways you could improve it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that needs to be seen as a normal thing and not in any way punitive. Right. And so, in fact, I think there's with faculty evaluations, which is every year for pre-tenure people, every second year for everybody else. I think deans, to my knowledge, deans are doing a pretty good job of, at this point, rewarding people who make efforts to become better teachers. And I think that's a thing that's important, because I think it sends the signal out to people, this is something we expect from you. And again, we need to provide those supports as people go, and we need to provide, as people get a little farther in their career, we need to provide room for them to experiment with things so that, first of all, doing this, some of the courses I've been teaching since I came here 29 years ago. So, kind of being able to walk into the classroom, and yes, I'm teaching the same material, but I get to do it a different way, because my department is, allowing me to go into the classroom and experiment with different delivery methods, or, kind of different ways to organize the material, whatever it might be. That's really important as you get farther into your career. And again, we need to make sure that we reward honest attempts to try something new, even when it doesn't work so well, provided people are doing the self-reflection and saying, I tried this, it didn't work so well, either I'll tweak what I did so that it's better, or, well, maybe that wasn't such a great idea and I won't do it again, right? So we need to really kind of, we need to continually tell people that we value effort in improving our teaching all the way through people's careers.
Right, excellent. And you and I talked a little bit through our correspondence about this continuity also of teaching from, how did you put it, teaching activities from outreach to graduate school. What do you mean by that?
So for a number of years now, I've been involved with the science fair movement. So I was involved with the Canada-wide Science Fair when it came here in 2013. I was involved with the Regional Science Fair as the chief judge at the Regional Science Fair for several years. And more recently, I've been back at the Canada-wide Science Fair, so I'm currently the national judge-in-chief. So people who do outreach, and not everybody will do this, but people who do outreach, we have a huge advantage in terms of having contact with high school students. The Canada-wide Science Fair is a little bit different because it's a very elite activity, but certainly at the Regional Science Fair, we see young people who've got a range of knowledge and abilities in science, and it helps you understand the students who are coming into the university. Because it's when you first see them in first year, if you haven't had any contact with high school students, it's a little hard sometimes to figure out kind of their maturity level, all those things that go into them being successful, right? So it's really useful, if you can do outreach, it's really useful to do that because you see the students coming in. Teaching undergraduate courses, of course, tells you something about the students who are going to come out the end and maybe go into graduate school. So having contact with students kind of throughout their whole journey, if you can arrange that, which again won't be possible for everyone, really kind of helps situate where a typical student is intellectually in terms of maturity and so on and so forth at each stage of their journey, and really helps you prepare appropriate things for them to do in class, appropriate ways of delivering the material, appropriate exercises for them, and so on.
Well, excellent. And once again, this has been a great interview, and thank you very much. And congratulations again for this Excellence Teaching Award. It is an honor to be able to talk to you, and I hope we get a chance to sit down again someday and chat.
Thank you.
So thank you.